Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Network Our podcast. I am your host, Molly Crease, and today I have a special guest with me. Her name is Marsha Gregg. She is from the beautiful small island, Caribbean island called St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're both from the island. I am going to be biased and say it's the most beautiful island in the world, but that's just me. But Marsha is an assistant fiscal officer with over 10 years experience in the accounting and finance field. And one of her passions is about helping women through entrepreneurship and personal financial management. She's also a certified financial coach, and she also has fun creating art. I'm going to ask her about that later on. She is also of the Christian faith, and she also likes to do journaling. So we're going to get into everything. Welcome to the Network Our podcast, Marsha.
Thank you, Molly. It's good to be here.
Okay, so my first question for you is, what do you think are some of the different? Well, you've migrated from St. Vincent to the USA, and give me one good thing about moving from St. Vincent to the USA, and then give me one bad thing about moving from St. Vincent to the USA.
That's quite interesting. So I only recently moved up, maybe I think I would say about 5 or 6 years ago. But nevertheless, one of the good things about being in the US is I think there is a vast amount of opportunities for persons to excel in many different areas. If you want to get depends on wherever you want to go. There is an avenue for you to take. And I don't think there is much of that in the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, most of the things is just one straight path. You grow up, you go to school, you either get a job with the government, teaching, police officers, or so on. But in the USA, you do have different opportunities, different fields you can get into, and that would pique your interest. One of the bad things, I don't want to say bad, but one of the negative things that I've noticed is that even though there are a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of loopholes sometimes that you have to go through in order to be able to really capitalize on these opportunities. As well as added to that, there is the distance, I would say, between people. It doesn't feel like family, where, if something is not going, your neighbor or your sister or brother would be able to help you. Up here, you have to be mentally strong to be able to get through whatever it is you're planning on working on.
I guess that's why they say if you make it here, you can make it anywhere, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because back home, you need a cup of rice, you run over by the neighbor, you get a cup of rice.
Yes.
You go outside, you pick a breadfruit, or you pick some mangoes and you make mango juice and all that kind of stuff. That's not
Mhm.
really the living up here. So I could see that. Those are the things I miss about St. Vincent, as well as the nice, bright, sunny, sparkling beaches and
Yes.
and all of that stuff. So yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I hope I'm not going too personal here, but you can tell me if you don't want to answer. But how is it? Well, maybe you have someone, so you can tell me if you have someone. But how is it dating with the dating in the U.S. Versus the Caribbean? I could tell
Uh,
you my experience, but I want to hear yours.
well, the thing is, I haven't dated anyone since I've been up here.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Um, and I think it has a lot to do with not necessarily fear, but I think because of the fact that if I do meet somebody, it's like I'm meeting a totally new person, and there really isn't any person I can do background checks with. So
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be so very careful of getting into any relationships. So I do have friends, and I kind of hang out with friends from church and so on, but nothing personal in terms of dating on that scene to get married.
Oh, okay. So I could tell you it's a dog eat dog world out there.
Oh, wow.
Since it's different in the Caribbean and Timors because it's such a small island, and the
Mm,
person who you date, you probably know them from since they were hella small, right?
Right, yes.
Up here, you don't, it's such a big melting pot of different people from all over the place. It's much
Mm-hmm.
harder. I was telling my sister today, I am tired of raising a man. I want you to come to me whole. I don't want to raise you anymore. Come to me whole.
Oh my God.
and she and she was like, put that on a Facebook post, put that on a post. I'm like, I am tired of raising men.
Yes,
Go fix your trauma, fix yourself, and then come to me whole, because I'm coming
yes.
to you whole. But I
I
digress.
agree.
I digress.
Yeah.
I digress. So tell me about you talk about your Christian faith and all of that
Mhm.
stuff. And there is so many issues going on in the US that we don't necessarily experience in the Caribbean, right? Because for the most part, we are shielded from those kind of a stuff. So how do you at the same time keep your Christian faith and what you believe in, but uh, also have empathy and understanding for other people and for what is going on in the world, especially the US today?
Right. That's a good question. And I think it takes us back to Jesus and who he was when he walked on this earth. And if we follow his example closely as Christians, we would see that even though he taught principles that we ought to live by today, he was also very sympathetic and he had empathy to the persons at that time who didn't really believe in what he was teaching or may have veered off from some of the things that he did. And so I think he has blessed me with an environment that I'm in church where we are being taught to have empathy towards others, since we have a department that is geared specifically towards missions. So it's
Mm-hmm.
always like a people centered church that I'm in. And outside of that, I think growing up as well. Having a Christian background, coming from home where we see there are so many persons who needed help, and in some instances we were in a better position to help them, then that I would say developed my empathy muscle, so
Yeah.
that even though I see things that are happening today, and we know that half of the things that they're doing is going against the word of God, we can still, I can still fall back on what I've learned and say, okay, I have the light because I believe in what the word of God said and I can see what it says true. But
Mm-hmm.
then there are a lot of persons who have not been exposed to that. And because of that, we have to be very sympathetic to them and we can't cast judgment on them. So that's really the standpoint I take in order to balance being like, okay, how come you don't know this? And then being able to say, okay, I understand where you are and still extend love towards them.
Yeah, that is such important. I always remember the Bible says, judge not unless ye be judged. So when you think you're up here high and mighty and judging
Yeah.
someone else, God
Mhm.
is saying, no, you're not even there yet. So why are you
Right.
judging this person?
Exactly.
And today, me and my sister was having a discussion. We're
Mhm.
not going to go into it about the bill that passed and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I was saying to her, are we forgetting that God give us a choice?
Right.
He didn't demand us and say you have to serve me. He gave us
Mhm.
a choice. He
Definitely.
laid out what would happen and what the consequences would be and all of that
Mhm.
stuff. But he still gave us a choice. He said it's your free will to do whatever you want. So that always gets me when men try to inflict stuff on other men and all of that stuff. I always go back to that and try to say I am going to try not to inflict my faith on other people because
Mhm.
they might be looking at it from a different standpoint. And we also
Yeah,
have to remember God is the one that saves, not us.
that's true.
We're not the savior of people. So
Definitely.
that is definitely definitely so important.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your background, your tell me a little bit about growing up in St. Vincent, your childhood. Was it fun? I know Caribbean, we have strict parents and all that kind of stuff. Give us a Give us a little story.
Well, growing up for me was fun. I think it's because of the fact that I didn't have much responsibilities in terms. We were free. We were able to just be children. Unlike today, we see that sometimes children have to take on adult responsibility. Who I was never in that position. I grew up with my parents were still married together. I was about 2 when my mom got saved, and we grew up in church.
Mhm.
My dad was the, I would say, little lenient one, but my mom was a disciplinarian. Like, everything had to be straight for her. You have to be straight in school with
Yeah.
your grades and all of that stuff. And we had to be up by 6 a.m. in the morning because devotions was a must in our homes, and we had to get our chores done before we go to school. But we always look forward to the weekends because in the neighborhood where we live, there were so many other children around, and we loved the scene because we live near to the sea. So on the weekends and a Saturday when our work was done, it was like we had a neighborhood beach line in the sea. Like all the kids would come over, we would just sit on there and have fun. And those were memories that I tend to hold on to because where we come from is really what shapes us into who
Mhm.
we are today. But I would say I had a lovely childhood. I mean, there were instances where I would say I've had issues that could have caused me trauma long term, but because of the family unit that I've been in, where there was support and there was love, I was able to grow into who I am today.
Yeah, family is so important. My mom had six of us,
Oh,
and
wow.
I say to my niece all the time, "You are so privileged because she has a full decked out bedroom with
Right.
books, and she got her TV in there, and she got laptop and
Okay.
tablet and all this stuff." And I'm like, we didn't have any of that
No,
stuff.
you're not.
I remember us having toys and having to share one toy, and it was a box of building blocks that my mom bought, and that
Right.
and
Yes.
that was it. And all of us would
Mhm.
share that and build the building blocks. I don't know, was that the same for you?
Well, I didn't. We didn't have to share it, but we had to wait until Christmas to get toys.
Yeah.
So every Christmas we would look forward to something that was coming because that was a time that I would say the parents were a little bit more generous because now everybody's expecting gifts, so it's free to give a little something more. But generally, we grew up understanding that we didn't have a whole lot and we had to make do with what we have. So while we didn't have to share toys, we still had to understand that concept.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, your childhood is so important, and it shapes you so much for
Mhm.
you for the future you that you become. And so
Right.
I want to ask you about your trajectory that you took. Was it planned professionally where you are today? Was it planned? And also, what were some of the challenges that you faced getting to this point where you're at now?
In terms of being planned, I think my life has been planned by God. That's my belief.
Mhm.
Many times, I think we take the route of where he didn't want us to go, but still he used that to bring us exactly where he wanted. So, like I said before, I grew up in a household where we didn't have a whole lot. My dad was basically the main provider in the home, even though, and I grew up seeing my mom at home, and she would do what at then in that time they would call them like housekeepers.
Mhm.
I think today they call them household engineers. So back then, she would work with couples and so forth and clean homes and do laundry and so on and bring a little extra into the home. But my dad was the main provider. So I grew up seeing that. And because we didn't have enough, I vowed that when I get older, I'm not going to do that kind of work, but I'm going to get into money. So that's how I got into finance. But even before I got into that, I started teaching. And that was one profession that I said I would never get into. But like I said, I think God planned that out where I had to go through those years of teaching to really learn and develop certain skills and certain character traits and so on in order to be able to go into the field that I'm in today, which is finance and with financial coaching, and more so towards women. The reason why I decided to choose that particular market is really because I see that when women are in a position where they're not financially independent, they're not in control of their finances, which inevitably control how they live their lives, it tends to have a negative impact on them, on their self-image, their self-esteem, and sometimes they tend to get into relationships because they're dependent on the other person for providing that financial need for them. And in my mind, I was like, we don't need to do that. Then, if we're in a position we're able to control our finances, then we can control who we accept in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very, very important. And we're gonna get into that. But I wanted to ask you, over the years, going through your school and your first job, what was your first job?
The first job I got when I came from college, I started working with a hotel as the bookkeeper at the time in the accounting department. That was the first thing I did.
Okay. I remember my first job was at I don't know if you know or remember, was at Ken Mars. They
Oh
had
yeah.
a bunch of stores inside there.
Mhm.
I remember I was working at one of the store inside there. That was my first job. Have going back into these memories, it's so awesome. And is there anything, any decision along the way that you made that you think now, when you look back, you say, had I done this, I would have probably been far along, or I would have been corrected that mistake or done something differently. Do you ever look back and say, I shouldn't have done that, or I wish I had known better there, or anything like that?
I do that on many
Oh,
occasions.
okay. So it's not just me. It's not just me. Okay, good.
I do that and in so many different areas of my life because I'll start with the spiritual. So sometimes I look at myself and today, yes, I am happy with the relationship I have with God, but I look back and I was like, okay, why didn't I not understand that we can actually have a relationship like this with God when I was younger, when I was 14, 15, 16? Maybe I would have been able to follow his direction better. I
Mhm,
probably would have gotten half of the things that I had written down on my list that I wanted to accomplish before I was 26.
mhm.
So, yes, I do. And then when it comes to education, because when I went into college the first time, we didn't have all the money necessary. So my dad had to mortgage his home to pay the rest to get me there. And sometimes I think, what if he didn't do that? What if I chose not to go to college because we didn't have the money and then decided let me just work? Then maybe what would my life has been like today?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And and with relationships, don't talk
Oh
about that.
God. Oh my
I was
God.
like, I'm like, okay, so what was I thinking at the time when I happened to be in this relationship? And I always go back to that. If I know today, if I knew then what I know today, I would not have been in some of those relationships that I was
Yeah.
in.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, and I think the last thing I thought about was doing my MBA. So I did that a good few years after I finished my first degree, as opposed to like some persons who do and then get straight into it. And then I think, what if I had done it a little earlier than I did at the time I did? Would I have been able to be more advanced than where I am today? Or, so most of the times when I think like that, I kind of just go back to, okay, whatever is to be will be. So if this is how God set it up, then this is how I gotta go with it.
Yeah, I say that all the time at the end of it, but then
Yeah.
you're human, so you can't help but think and go back. And sometimes I'm like, I know I was always entrepreneurship minded because my mom had us selling scythe and going up to the school with a tray and selling snacks to the kids and all that stuff. But I'm
Mhm.
saying I focused more on education and not on entrepreneurship. And now I'm doing entrepreneurship later in my life versus earlier. And I'm like, had I done it earlier, maybe I would have been this big thing in entrepreneurship versus just starting out. I think about that all the time. And then I think about when I came to the US, I was actually running from a breakup because I was just fresh out of a breakup. I was like, I think I was like a size 4 from that breakup. I was just not
Wow.
mentally there. My mom, oh, she was like, come on, you got to snap out of it. And I was like, I after that, I felt I had no sense of direction because I was
Mhm.
engaged, I was getting ready to be married, and all of that just went away, just crushed. And I was going to work, and I think, and I, oh, when I look back, I always say thank you, Jesus, because it was not in my mind to come away to study, but it just so happened that Monroe College came to St. Vincent and
Right.
was recruiting. And so I was like, oh, maybe I can do this. And I got the information, figured it out, talked to my parents, and then I was on a plane to come to study in Monroe College. And I'm like, when I look back at it, I'm like, maybe I wasn't supposed to get married at that time. Maybe God knew what was gonna happen and all of that stuff. Why he allowed that relationship to be dissolved or whatever. You can
That's
never know, right? Because
I
God
never.
don't he don't always tell you when he makes these
No,
decisions.
he does not.
And so sometimes you look back and you say, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, but
Yeah.
thank God
Hmm.
for journey and mercies. So I,
That's
I
right.
just I just wanted to find that out because I'm like, I do it, so I'm hope she does it, but but yeah, I guess so. So let's
Yeah.
talk about what you do. You are a financial, what did I say? Financial coach.
Hmm.
Um yes, you're assistant fiscal officer. So tell us about that.
Okay, so I currently work with a company called Friends of Crown Heights. We're like the biggest nonprofit daycare organization in Brooklyn. We have 20 different locations across the three boroughs, Manhattan, Brooklyn, and we do have in Queens as well.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that. 20?
yes,
Oh,
yes, we do.
wow.
And so now what I do is I work in the admin department, which is finance slash admin, and we manage the budget. So my particular portfolio, where I manage the budget, some of the budgets in terms of um, getting the budgets prepared for our fiscal year, which starts between July to June. Also, invoicing all the expenses because we're funded by the city. So we have to report to the city how the money is spent. So that's part of my portfolio as well as internally being able to prepare documents that are necessary for auditing and so forth. Giving monthly reports to the CEO and board in order for them to be able to see how the budget is being used, whether it's being used in the proper categories and so on and so forth.
Yeah. What do you because I have a financial background as well, and I can't seem to get out of it. So my passion for mentorship, I kind of mirrored it too. But what do you love about finance, and what is fulfilling to you? Because you mentioned about having that passion for helping women, and you talk about through entrepreneurship and through personal financial management. So you work with Friends of Crown Heights, the assistant fiscal officer. But
Mhm.
when do you have time to help women with the entrepreneurship and financial management? And also, why is that such a passion of yours?
Okay, well, I work full time there, so at least 7.5 hours a day. So most of anything that I do outside of work is done on evenings after work or on weekends. So I would help ladies in terms of managing their personal finance. And for me, it's because as a single woman living in the USA, you have to be able to take care of yourself since you
Yes.
have no one else to take care of you. And so, in order for you to take care of yourself, you have to be able to manage your finances properly. And I've had lots of conversations with women around my age, maybe younger, and I would hear the struggles that they talk about. Sometimes they're not able to pay their rent properly, or sometimes, and some of them are single moms where they still have to take care of their child by themselves. And so they have so many different expenses coming, and the income is not even matching up to the expenses. So then you hear the struggle coming out from what they're saying. And then I always believe that whenever God exposes you to a burden, then you ought to do something about it. You might not
Mm.
be able to change the entire world, but you should be able to do something to change that one person who's speaking to you. And so what I do is that I help women to start with budgeting. And while some may think that budgeting is restrictive, it actually gives you a lot of leeway to be able to tell your money where to go, what you're doing with the money. So I speak with women, I show them how this helps, how it works for them. And I work with them according to what their income looks like, what their expenses look like, and then look for ways in which they can either do both, increase their income, as well as cut some expenses that might not be necessary for that particular season that they're in their lives.
What do you think are some of the reasons women go through this financial hardship?
I believe it has a lot to do with how we were brought up. Many of us come from the old traditional way where we were taught to be homemakers, that we have to stay in the home and we don't have to work, and the men would be the providers for us. And so a lot of women grew up with that sort of thinking, and our mindset was more where someone will have to take care of us,
Hmm.
unlike we have to take care of ourselves. So then now coming from that mindset and being put into the environment where you have to take care of yourself, you have to exercise discipline and so on. And some of these things I don't think we were taught growing up because we weren't, it wasn't necessary for us to learn it. So, and then I feel that a lot of times we get into situations that cause us a lot of financial stress. And again, it goes back to our programming, our mindset, where we come from. How do we make decisions in terms of choosing the person that we're going to be having babies with, and so on and so forth? And then when that happens, now we tend to fall back on our old programming. So seeing that coming from where I came from, and know that a lot of the things that I know today, I didn't know that from growing up, but I knew it from learning and being involved in different communities like this one, We Network, where you learn from so many different women, different backgrounds, and so on. So then I'm able to help them to get from where they are to hopefully where they want to be. Because the thing is, a lot of women, we have dreams. We have a lot of big dreams, and sometimes we bury them because of what we were taught.
Yeah.
And today, I mean, I can see that there are so many movements out here that are speaking to women to bring out what is inside of them. And in order for us to do that, sometimes we have to have proper finances.
Yeah. And how do you get women to change that mindset? Because you're taught something from small, it's embedded in you, it's hard to get rid
Mhm.
of that. So what are some tips, what are some advice that you use when you talk to these women? And for the women that are listening to this podcast, what steps do they take to change that mindset and to put themselves in that shape to be financially sound and to have a good relationship with money?
Right. Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to want to get out from where you are. Because if you don't, then you're never going to do anything about it. And so once you have decided that this particular environment is not good for me, this is not where I want to be, then you have to get out of it. And how do you do that? For me, what I did was to educate myself. So I created a personal development plan. I listened to Dr. John Maxwell a lot, who's one of our leadership gurus.
Mhm.
And I heard him spoke about growing is not, it doesn't happen by accident. It is intentional. It's something that you have to plan. And he spoke about creating a development plan for yourself in terms of the books that you want to read, the conferences that you want to attend, the circle that you want to be in. And so I created one of that for myself and started reading and be listening to podcasts a lot, like this one and many others that speak on the topic of finance. And also I listen a lot to not doctor, to Dave Ramsey, and I even went through his financial peace class and then did the coaching. So I sort of immersed myself into the area of pain that I wanted to change. And so, because if I didn't do that, then I would still not have the knowledge that I need. And outside of getting the knowledge and the education, I now had to implement what he was saying. So, taking it one step at a time, started budgeting intentionally on a monthly basis and then breaking it down weekly and bi-weekly and so on and so forth. Even so much so that I went and created my own journal for my own finances so that I can keep track of what's happening. Because if you never track it, you'll never know what's happening in your money. And if I'm at, let's say, on a $5,000, but I want to get to 10,000, I have to create a pathway to get there, and then I have to be able to track to see if I'm really on the path that I need to get there. So I would say educate yourself, find a community of women where you can learn from each other in terms of this, because we have so many women today who are making 5 figures, 6 figures, even 7 figures in their businesses. So it's not impossible for you as a woman to do it. And, educate yourself, get into the community and practice what you're learning, put it into place and be intentional about what you're doing.
Yeah, so that is such great advice, and I was taking notes here as you were talking, and changing that mindset is so important, and you have to want to change. You
Yes.
have to want to be in that better place. So once you want to do that, then you have to educate yourself and learn some
Definitely.
tips and steps on how to do that. You got to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You got to find a community that will push you and hold you accountable,
That's
and you
right.
gotta do it for the betterment and for the advancement of yourself. So
Yeah.
that is such great advice, such great advice. We're winding down to the end. The time goes by so quickly when when you're having fun.
Mhm.
Talk to me a little bit about because in your bio I read about, you talk about your journaling, which I think that is so important to do. Sometimes things go on up in your head and it's good to write it down. And there are so many authors out there that started from journaling and then manifested that into a book. So I commend you for doing that. I have to start doing that. I am not good at the journaling, but commend you on doing that. Talk about the art. You say you create art from recycled bottles or whatever. What kind of art is that?
Yes, and I should have had one to show you.
Ah, that would have been awesome to see.
Yes, if I can just, oh, there's one right there. I can just get it for you
Oh,
when I'm
of
done.
course you can get
But
it.
what I do is that, there are these wine bottles and so on that when it's finished, most of the time we just recycle them. So what I found was doing that helped me to relax. So I would use acrylic paint and so on, and then create these sort of images in my head sometimes. And then I'll just paint them out on bottles and then just look at it. Well, let me just get one so that you can
Oh,
see what
that's
I'm
pretty
talking about.
cool. I would love to see that. Never, I think art is such a great expression, and it helps to de-stress and all of that stuff. So, oh my,
Okay, so this
that's
is,
amazing.
yeah.
That's amazing. That's really good.
Yeah. So it's more like a hobby to me. And like
Mhm.
I said, it helps me to relax. And I think I just love seeing it. And in my mind, what I thought about when I did it the first time it was just a hobby. But
Mm.
then as I constantly do it, you get these revelations. And then I look at it and say, could you imagine this bottle had no look, no form, no nothing. And then from a few bits of paint and colors here and there, you look at it and you're in awe. Could you imagine thinking about us and how God transforms us? When we
Yeah.
look at ourselves, sometimes we think that we're nothing, but then God does his work, and then you be like, oh my God, you are such a masterpiece.
Have you thought about selling, really
I
getting into it and
haven't.
selling?
I haven't thought about that as yet, but
Okay.
that's a good idea.
Yes, it is. People buy stuff, quirky stuff like that, to decorate their homes and stuff.
Mhm.
So that might be something you want to look into.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Toastmasters really quick because I know
Mhm.
Toastmasters, you're in Toastmasters. It has been a foundation for you to, I would say, build your confidence to be able to speak better and all of
Mhm.
that stuff. So just give me one quick experience of your time in Toastmasters. And for our listeners, give us, I would say, two quick advantages of being a part of such an organization as Toastmasters.
Okay. So I would say one of my experiences so far is even though I loved speaking, I had the fear of speaking, of standing in front of people. I'd have to go through an entire ritual before I can even speak. And being in Toastmasters and having to do speeches over a period of time and getting great feedback from your peers has helped me to somewhat conquer that fear.
Hmm.
So where I can stand and I can speak, for example, even though we're having a conversation, but doing this podcast with you, I'm able to be more relaxed and confident in what I'm saying. And two of the advantages is, like you said, one of them, it helps to build your self-confidence because many times we have potential, but we can't even unleash it because we don't have the confidence that we can even do what we think we can. And in Toastmasters, you get a lot of support. Your peers give you feedback. It's not criticism, they give you feedback that you can implement to help to develop not just your speaking, but also your self-confidence, your self-esteem, your self-image, and so on and so forth. And one of the other things is that it helps you professionally as well in your job, in your workplaces, and also helps to launch you into different areas of um, speaking careers, maybe coaching, and so on. So it's like a catalyst for you to move into many different things.
That's amazing. Any word of wisdom for our listeners? Any last minute advice, tips, or something you just want to lay on us? I know you have those little nuggets there. So give us something that's gonna wow us and make us think and go through the rest of the week or the rest of the day when people listen to this podcast.
Well, one of the things that I want to say, I don't know if it's going to wow you, but I hope it does, is that I believe that we all have something inside of us that the world needs. And I think that for too long we have kept it hidden. And I applaud what you're doing because you're exposing a lot of talents, a lot of women in so many different areas that I think for too long have been in obscurity. And so, what I would say to the listeners is that dig deep and find out who you are, why you are here, and what gift you need to give to the world. Because we're all gifts and we're all wrapped. But if we never unwrap ourselves, then the world is not going to see what's inside of the gift. So we have to dig inside and find out what is in there, and then do all that we can do in our power to ensure that the world experiences us.
That was amazing. You said it was not going to wow me. I really love that gift part. Unwrap the gift. See what's
Yeah.
inside. It doesn't make sense you having a gift and you never open it. Like you said, we got gifts for Christmas and birthdays and all that stuff. If we never open it, we don't know what we're going to get. So
Mhm.
I really like that you said that. You have the gift there. Don't be scared. Unwrap it, open it, and you might be surprised. It might be such a pleasant surprise of what's in
Right.
there.
Yes.
And and I remember once when you said that, I remember there was a song, I forgot who sang it, but you would said, God said, what is that you have in your hand? I can use it if you give it to me.
Yeah.
Right. And
Mhm.
it's similar like that gift. He's given you a gift and he's just saying to you, open it. I want
Yes.
you to open it and use what I've given to you. So that was awesome. That was amazing. That was a great end to the podcast. I had so much fun. I hope
Too.
everyone that's listening to this enjoyed it, enjoyed the message, can learn from what your story and what you've given here. So I want to say thank you so much for coming through and sharing your story with us. Thank you so much, Marsha. And to everyone out there, thank you for listening. This has been another episode of the Network Hour podcast. Until next time, live, laugh, and love, and open that gift so you can see what's inside. And we are out of here.